When people find out I'm from the United States of America and I moved to Istanbul, Turkey, I usually get one of two reactions.
Oh my god, no way, that's so amazing.
Or,
why on earth would you do that to yourself?
I've actually lived in Istanbul for a little bit more than 5 years. Yeah. And today I want to talk about it. I want to talk about what life is really like here, at least for me. If you're new here, my name is Sahar. I was born and raised in the United States and I live in Istanbul. And I've been living here for a long time. So let's talk about what daily life is actually like for me in Istanbul. I work a full-time job from Monday to Friday, so most of the week I am working. I have a hybrid job, so that means I work a few days from home and I work a few days from the office. This is how my life looks like during the week. I'm usually working from 9 to 5, and if I do have the energy after I work, I do go outside. Nowhere too far, but I do stay pretty local. I go to a local cafe, I go to the mall, there's a mall right next to me. I run errands after work, or during the week if I'm working from home, I'll go to the bank, I'll go to the market, things like that. That's typically how my work week looks like. For the days that I go to the office, I live on the European side, but I do work on the Asian side. So the nice thing is I do get to take a ferry from the European side to the Asian side, and I get to see the magic of the Bosphorus. On the days that I do go to the office, I come home extremely exhausted. It's really exhausting, not just working, but going to the office, because it does take me around 45 minutes to an hour because I don't have a car. So I have to rely on the public transportation, which is not a big deal because the public transportation in Istanbul is really amazing. So during the weekdays, I don't really get to explore the city as much. Istanbul really comes alive on the weekend, and that's when I'm really able to see the life in Istanbul. However, one thing that does define life in Istanbul, whether it's a weekday or weekend, is chaos. Istanbul is extremely chaotic in a very real way. But I can say that Istanbul has two different worlds. You have the world of Istanbul that feels like pure magic, where you're on the ferry and everything feels amazing. You're on the Bosphorus. It feels so calm and serene and like you're in a Turkish series. Or if you're walking throughout the city and you're casually walking by Hagia Sophia or Galata Tower or any other major landmark in the city. Those are the pure moments of magic in Istanbul. And in those moments, you might think to yourself, wow, how is this my real life? The other side of Istanbul is pure chaos. 1 minute, you're in a metro station, trying to catch the metro that's about to leave in 30 seconds, and you have to push your way through a huge crowd of people. Or when you're crammed on a bus that's over capacity and it's rush hour, so the bus doesn't move and you're stuck there. Or constantly bumping into people on the street because this city has 20 million people. The pure contrast between the pure magic and the chaos is really what defines life in Istanbul. Also, Istanbul is a city that never sleeps. No matter what time of the day it is, what day of the week it is, there's always somebody outside. You'll never be the only person on the street, and that's something I like sometimes. There's always life, there's always movement, and there's always noise in this city. It's a very noisy city, so be prepared for that. Overall, Istanbul is very alive. Cafes and restaurants stay open pretty late. The malls are open till 10 p.m., which to me is a big deal because in the town I grew up in, malls closed at 8. 8 p.m. is too early for a mall to close. So the fact that the malls in Istanbul are open till 10 p.m. is a game changer for me. One of my favorite parts about my life here in Istanbul is how walkable everything is. I can easily do 10,000 steps a day, no questions asked. But I actually end up doing more than 10,000 steps in a day because you have to walk everywhere in Istanbul. And I'm not complaining. I enjoy walking throughout the city. I enjoy being able to go places without a car or within my neighborhood. I just really love how walkable everything is in here, and that's a huge part of my life is walking. And that alone has completely changed my lifestyle. So daily life in Istanbul isn't just one thing. It's a mix of things. It's a mix of chaos, it's a mix of magic, it's a mix of exhaustion, excitement, everything combined in one day. So that's my daily life. Now let's talk about the best parts of living in Istanbul, in my opinion. Even though Istanbul is really chaotic, there are things about this city that make me stay, and I've been here for 5.5 years. One of the biggest things is just how massive Istanbul is. Istanbul is a huge city, and when I first moved here, I knew that it was a big city, but I didn't really understand how big it was. It's huge. Istanbul is kind of never ending, but in the best way. Every neighborhood here feels completely different, like you're stepping into a completely different world. So for example, we have Galata, we have Bebek, we have Nişantaşı, we have Bağdat Street. We have so many different neighborhoods, and every neighborhood in Istanbul is very different, and I kind of like that because you can easily change your environment. It's not the same boring thing every single time. If one day I feel like I'm in an artsy mood, I'll go to Galata. If another day I feel like I just want to be by the water and want everything to be calm, I'll probably go to Bebek. So you can really live here for years and still feel like you're discovering new parts of Istanbul. And even though I have been here for quite some time, there are still places that are new to me that I've never discovered. Another reason is the food. Turkish cuisine is excellent. Turkish food is definitely something I never get tired of, but let's say you're not into Turkish food that much or you get tired of Turkish food. There are other options as well because Istanbul in specific is kind of like a melting pot. You'll find a lot of different people from a lot of different cultures and countries. And that means there's a lot of cuisine in Istanbul. If you're tired of Turkish food, you can easily try something else because Istanbul has it all. One of my favorite things about living here is the cafe culture, and I never realized how much I like cafe culture because in the United States, it wasn't really a thing when I was there, or maybe it was, but the cafes there are just too industrial, too simple. It doesn't feel homey, and there's something wrong with the cafes that are in the US. I don't know what it is, but there's just like no life in those cafes over there. But in Istanbul, it's very different. The city here is filled with cafes, and it's a very common place to socialize, to hang out, to work, to just people watch, to just sit all day. It's something I really enjoy. And I oftentimes find myself hopping from one cafe to another, especially when I'm exploring the city. I find that it's actually the best way to explore the city is you just go to a neighborhood or a street, find a cafe, sit there for a little bit, and then go to the next cafe. Some days my plan is literally just get up, pick a neighborhood I want to go, find a cafe, sit there, and then see where the day takes me. I mentioned this previously, but walkability is a huge thing for me. I think it's so important that I'm walking every day and that I'm active because in the United States, that was not the case for me. I love that I can just get up and walk and go wherever I want, whenever I want, and also, I like that I can rely on the public transportation as well, and I don't have to really think about driving or parking or things like that. I can just get up and go. And that kind of freedom has changed my life in a way because I don't really feel too restricted and I feel more like a free spirit. Another nice part of living in Istanbul is definitely the historical aspect. Wherever you go, there's a piece of history in Istanbul because it was such an important city. You'll be walking to get a cup of coffee or going somewhere and you'll see a historic wall or a historic building or something historical, and it's really cool in my opinion. It's a nice reminder of how far we've come. All of these things together, they're really what ground me to stay in Istanbul. As much as I love living in Istanbul, there are negative sides as well, and they're really hard and they're not maybe shown too much on social media. Living in Istanbul or living in Turkey in general is not easy. It's very difficult. Of course, as a foreigner, one of the biggest challenges that you will face moving to any country is the language, especially if you don't know that language. So I've been here for many years. I have learned a bit of Turkish. Of course, I'm not fluent in Turkish. I'm able to get by with what I know and I'm still learning. But sometimes it can be really frustrating because there are situations where even though I do know a lot of Turkish, I still cannot do things on my own, if that makes sense. And it's specifically for bureaucratic things. So if I need to go to the government for any type of situation, that's where I struggle the most. A lot of the times I can't handle those things by myself, so I do need to rely on somebody, and luckily I have my husband who is Turkish and who speaks Turkish. He usually accompanies me to these type of things where he translates, but I don't like that because it does make me feel too dependent, so that's something I'm still trying to work on is the language. Another hard part of living abroad, I would say, is feeling like an outsider. This feeling usually hits me when I'm at group events. So at my job, I'm the only foreigner in the office and there's around 150 workers. So I'm always feeling like the oddball in the group. Or if I'm going to a wedding or any type of event where it's mostly going to be Turkish people, that's where it hits me the most that I am an outsider and that I am the oddball. It's not that they're doing anything wrong. They're very welcoming and hospitable, but I think it's just something that I'll never get used to. There's also the loneliness that comes with living abroad. Not having your own friends or family nearby can really make you feel lonely. This is something that I struggled with at the beginning. I don't really struggle with it anymore, even though I don't really have many friends and I don't have any family members nearby. I do have my husband and he's kind of enough for me, and I've grown to be comfortable in solitude. Those are more aspects of living abroad in general and not really specific to Turkey. So now I'm going to switch gears and talk about the specific things in Turkey that are really hard. The biggest and most difficult thing about living in Istanbul or Turkey in general that's really difficult is the economic situation. The currency is constantly fluctuating and it makes life really stressful, really frustrating, and sometimes you're really uncertain of what to do or what the future will look like. The inflation here, even though the whole world has encountered inflation, the inflation in Turkey, I think, is by far the highest inflation in the world, if I'm not mistaken, or one of the highest inflation rates. When I first moved here, for example, everything was super affordable, and even though everything increased and there's inflation and blah blah blah, the salaries have not really increased that much in Turkey, and that's what makes it really difficult. So I work in a company where I earn Turkish lira, so I have a Turkish salary, and it's really difficult, not just from my perspective, but everybody is kind of going through the same thing. When you earn in Turkish lira, it is really hard and frustrating because you go to the market and every week the prices of goods change. It usually increases on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and you see those changes and it's kind of a domino effect. It starts in the market and then it's going to end up in the restaurants, the shops, so on and so forth. So then the increases continue and they don't stop, but the Turkish wages are not matching. So there's always kind of some inconsistency between the prices of goods and the salaries that people are earning. I would say that is one of the most difficult parts of living in Turkey. It's very frustrating and it causes a lot of stress to everybody, everybody in Turkey. I also want to mention that in Turkey, there are also laws that are very interesting that make life difficult as well. So for example, there's the foreign phone. When I first moved to Turkey, I obviously had a phone with a US SIM, and Turkey introduced a law at the time, I think it was 2 years after I moved to Turkey, that you have to register your foreign device. You have to pay a fee. And at the time, the fee wasn't that much, but right now the fee is probably over $1,000 to just register a foreign device. So it's like things like that, and then my phone ended up being blacklisted. So my phone is blacklisted for 7 years. But anyway, it's just things like that are also really annoying and difficult. Or for example, there's a hefty tax on certain things like cars. I think the tax is like 200% or more or less, I don't know, but it's very high. So that also makes it kind of difficult because it's not as easy to purchase things with a Turkish lira salary. So things like that are also very difficult in Turkey. I want to switch gears to how living in Istanbul changed me as a person. One of the biggest changes is that living in Istanbul definitely removed me from a bubble. So I feel that the United States, people living in the United States are kind of in their own bubble and they don't really know what's going on in the rest of the world. And that's something that I realized when I lived here. When I talk to my friends in the US or my family in the US, I do feel like they are kind of unaware of reality in other places and they're too fixated on life in the United States and that the US is like the center of the world kind of thing. That's kind of what I realized. This might not be the case for everybody, but this is something that I realized in my personal life when I talk to people that I know in the US versus people that I know in other countries. Living in Istanbul definitely forces you to see things differently because you're in the middle of it all. We have Europe on one side, we have Asia on the other, we have the Middle East. So we're kind of in a zone where we are in the middle of a lot of countries. So you begin to see how people adapt, how they survive, how they become resilient to change or difficult situations in Turkey and in the countries around you. I would say that living here has given me a wider perspective on life and on other countries as well. And it's also given me a different sense of empathy. Another way that I changed is that I've become very aggressive, not in a negative way. Istanbul has more or less 20 million people, so you kind of have to become a little bit more aggressive. You have to be a bit tough. I am living in a city with a lot of people. I had to be more tough. I have to be more aggressive just to get by. Also, living in Istanbul and living in a place with so many different people, it teaches you how to navigate difficult situations. And I had to navigate those situations on my own in a language that I don't know. And oftentimes I'm in situations that are uncomfortable or unfamiliar. At the beginning, it was more difficult, but I would say now I'm kind of used to it. And I would say like my problem solving skills have developed immensely in this country. Another thing that I feel is I feel more alive in this city. I feel like, for example, the US is it's too predictable and it's too comfortable and you're never really outside your comfort zone. But in Istanbul, you there's always something different going on. There's always curveballs kind of thrown at you, and it kind of gives you a different sense of life. I also like how in Istanbul, Turkish people are very sociable. You can definitely see this if you ever come to Istanbul. They're always socializing in restaurants, cafes, parks, wherever it is. And I think that was an aspect that was missing in the United States, is I never really felt the socialization, but in Turkey you definitely see that people here do like to socialize. They enjoy being together, which I think is a nice thing. Living in Istanbul didn't just change my surroundings, it changed how I move throughout life. Okay, so now I want to talk about who Istanbul is for. I always say this to myself and to everybody that I meet. Istanbul is not for everyone. Even a lot of Turkish people want to leave, not just Istanbul, but Turkey in general. A lot of people want to leave this country and, you know, they find it odd that I came to this country while so many people are trying to leave. And I understand that. I get where they're coming from. But Istanbul is different to me than it is for other people. Like I said, life in Istanbul is really hard. It can really get challenging, it can really be uncomfortable or inconvenient. And it's a very intense city overall, but I felt that the city is perfect for me. It gave me the freedom I was looking for. It made me more resilient as a person. It made me more confident. It made me navigate things where I was definitely uncomfortable, but I was able to overcome difficult situations by myself. Living here has given me different characteristics that I don't think I would have ever been able to achieve if I stayed in the United States. That being said, Istanbul is definitely not a place you move to for comfort and convenience. Istanbul is probably the last place you would think of for comfort and convenience. I would say Istanbul is more of a city for you to grow in and to experience hard things to shape you into a different person. That being said, even if you don't see yourself living in Istanbul for the long term, I would recommend Istanbul as a short-term experience. I think Istanbul is a city that everybody should experience at least once, whether it's a short trip or vacation, whether it's for a study abroad program, whether it's for a temporary work program, whatever it may be. I think that every person should visit Istanbul at least once in their life and experience it. Istanbul became my home. It became the place that I grew up in. It became the place that I became independent and I became myself. So I have a really deep love for this city and I really appreciate everything that it has taught me. There were definitely many bumps along the way. Like I said, living here is not easy and I experienced that firsthand for the past few years, and it's never going to be easy. But it has shaped me in a way that I really admire myself, and I think if my younger self could look at me now, she would be so impressed and she would kind of be shocked maybe to see how I am now, because I've really changed a lot and I think I've changed for the better. If you're thinking about moving or visiting Istanbul and you have any questions, don't forget to leave a comment down below and I will respond to your comment. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram and TikTok to see more of my daily life in Istanbul and what it's like to live in Istanbul as a foreigner. Let me know also if you like this video and if I should do more videos like this. Thanks for watching. Bye!